In this episode, I'm talking with someone who brings such a refreshing yet practical perspective to intentional living and decluttering. Her name is Emily McDermott, and she is a wife, mother of two energetic boys, and a simplicity seeker. She is also the host of the top 1% globally ranked podcast, Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, where she helps moms declutter their homes, heads, and hearts. As a virtual and in-person decluttering coach, she works with moms one-on-one to be intentional about what's coming into their home, let go of what is no longer serving them, and create systems to maintain a clutter-free life. Emily enjoys writing custom poetry, dancing, and eating peanut butter out of the jar. What I love about Emily is that she doesn't just talk about simplifying, she actually lives it. One day she picked up the book called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning, and instead of putting it back on the shelf like so many of us do with a book that we come upon, I'm not naming any names, it's me, she followed through. She began applying the method in her own life because she wanted to take the future burdens off her loved ones, create clarity, and reduce stress. Who wouldn't want that, right? Welcome to Organize with Grace. I'm Grace Ramon. Around here, we talk about helping parents downsize, clear out a home, and keep what matters. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me today. So let's get into it. Here is my conversation with Emily McDermott. It's been a while since I've had a guest, and nothing better than to kick it off again by having Emily McDermott in this show. And we are going to talk about a book that I have discovered a few years back. And what I want to say about it first is that, there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of organizing and decluttering books out there that we can grab hold of and learn. And we no longer really have to say, I don't know where to start because there's so much out there. YouTube, books. But this one book I read a while back, and I'm so excited to talk about it with Emily because she is someone who has actually put this into practice. And it is called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. Emily, thank you for being here. I'm so excited. I'm facing her right now through Zoom. So thank you once again for being here.
It's so funny. I never thought that one of my favorite topics to discuss is death cleaning, but it is. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So a few minutes before I came in here, I told my husband real quick what we were going to talk about. And he's like, what? Wait, say that again? Swedish. Wait, what? Death clean. And he made that face like, what is that about? So I'm excited to dive into it with you. And before we do, Emily, actually, we're gonna go right into it. Emily, when was this introduced to you? And for you, did it click right away, or did it take time, for it to, for you to decide that, you know what, I want to apply this to my life? What was it like for you with Swedish death cleaning? And then, well, before that, I want to have you explain to my people, if they haven't heard about it yet, what it is.
Yeah, we'll start there. So it is a Swedish cultural tradition that has been around for a while, but it was popularized by the book, like you mentioned, which I think in Sweden came out in 2017. In the US, it was 2018. And I read it in 2019. And it is essentially making sure that you take care of your own stuff now while you are in good health and of sound, hopefully, body and mind, so that your loved ones are not burdened by that experience. And the author of the book, Margareta Magnusson, she's a pretty funny lady. She says in the book she's between 80 and 100 years old. So she's kind of this like funny lady. And she had to do this for several family members. And she's like, well, this is a cultural tradition in Sweden, but I've also been through having to clean out loved ones' houses numerous times. And I feel like it's my duty to kind of share this information with all of you. So the gentle aspect is that it doesn't have to be this complete like weekend black trash bag craziness, get it all out. It can be gradual. It can be done again when you're not faced with a health issue or that somebody has passed unexpectedly. You can do this earlier. And in fact, I did it at the time I was 39 and I was in perfect health. And I just was inspired by the fact that, oh, I've been on this decluttering journey now for about 4 or 5 years, but I've never done a kind of refresh or review of my items based upon this different way of approaching it. So that's kind of what appealed to me to kind of like take almost a second view or second pass at my stuff to
Oh,
be
yeah.
like, oh, well, what would it be like if I died suddenly and my husband and kids were having to look through my stuff? Like, how would I approach this whole process differently? So that's kind of why I went all in with it.
Yeah. So, all right, death and dying. All right. So, when you ask yourself that, was it easy, like to just say, if I were to die, or was it something like, ooh, that's kind of like, morbid, but what was it like for you when you
Yeah,
asked yourself that question?
I had already kind of done some thought processing and work around that. Like I had written at that time, I didn't have my podcast, so I was blogging, and I wrote
Mm,
a blog post about writing your eulogy as an intentional living exercise, like now. And so I was already kind of in that mindset, like not being afraid of the concept,
yeah.
oh, if something were to happen. For me, I do like to plan, but more than that, I don't want to be a burden on anyone, like ever. My friends, my family, like
Mm,
I don't want them having to deal with things just because I didn't plan properly or I didn't do things like how I should have. And my favorite quote in the whole book, this gives you a good indication of this woman's kind of personality. But she says, don't ever imagine anyone will wish or be able to schedule time off to take care of what you didn't bother to take care of yourself. No matter how much they love you, don't leave this burden to them. And I'm like,
wow.
that's really pretty powerful because we always think we have tomorrow. We always think we can put it off to another day, and that's not always the case. So if I had an opportunity to be able to do something now, like why wouldn't I? Because if you think for a moment of your home and you've passed and you're looking down and you see your kids and your, husband, your wife, like grieving and having to go through all of your stuff, like looking at just piles and piles of stuff, like I have no idea where to start. I have no idea what to do. I don't know what she would have wanted us to do with this.
Yeah.
Like that is a nightmare for me. So I wanted to do what I
Mm,
could so that that wouldn't happen.
yeah. Yeah. Wow. And what a way to at that moment is like, as you're doing it, to express that care and consideration, and love for your family members, and who will go, through your stuff, and however life goes, should you go first before them, that they would not have, I mean, grieving is heavy enough. And then to add the stuff, like, on top of that, that's awesome. And it can sound intense, the Swedish death cleaning. Now let's get into it. So what was it actually? What did it look like for you? So a day in the life of Emily, of practicing this day-to-day Swedish death
Yeah.
cleaning. So from your memory, like what was that like?
Yeah, so you have to keep in mind that I had already been on this like decluttering, paring down journey
Nice.
for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it might look different from somebody that was just kind of starting from the beginning. But I think the easiest way to kind of dip your toe into it is to come from an approach of being able to write down and understand where you would want certain categories of things to go if you were to pass tomorrow. So it's kind of like the planning process. So
Yeah.
for me, I actually have a Google document that I have shared with my husband. And the main categories that I was like looking at first, and this kind of goes with what is in the book also, was clothing,
Mhm.
books, furniture, housewares, and then sentimental, like kind of at the end. And she has like a specific way of doing sentimental stuff we can talk about in a bit. But it
Yeah.
was more like if, I were to pass, I would want my clothing to go to a specific women's shelter. I would want my books to go to the library. I would want my furniture, if any family members wanted it, great. If otherwise, I'm going to donate to this refugee organization that I work with currently. So it's more of this sort of pre-planning, and make sure that you share the document with someone, preferably your spouse or partner first or another family member, so that they know this is what I want done with these immediate categories of things. So I think even before you start doing any like decluttering per se, it's more of that planning from a place of I am alleviating work and burden from other people. That's how it really differs from other decluttering approaches. You're doing this with that in the front of your mind. How can I make this easier for my family members? That's how it's
Yeah.
different than just like a weekend, like, oh, I'm going to take 30 things out of my
Mhm.
house,
Mhm.
or, like all these kind of decluttering games and hacks and things. It's more of this intentional, like, I want to make sure it's very clear what I want done with my things. And I also want to start paring down so that it's not this difficult. I keep saying burden, but really that's what it comes down to, a
Yeah,
burden to
yeah.
other people.
It's true. It's true. And yes, and I specifically enjoy that planning time. And that's even for me when I, went on my journey with decluttering and down and just really letting go of things, is that that wasn't something that I had thought about right away, the planning part. And I think a lot of us don't, because we think like, oh, I'm just gonna get, like you said, I'm just gonna get rid of a few things and that's it. But when you start with a plan, you are already making that decision, all these decisions on where your things will go. And as you go, it's so much, it's so much easier. And so that's where it sounds like that's where you began. And was there anything that you felt like was the right place to start? Did you go along with the book of like, okay, clothing first and then this, or did you kind of go another way
Yeah, and
with,
again, I
Mhm.
had gone through some of the things already, but I
Yeah,
believe that I did kind of follow sort of like what the book recommended. But
yeah,
when you get to furniture and housewares, like one of the things to keep in mind is other family members. And I know with how much you speak about downsizing, like this is kind of a big thing too.
yeah.
It's helpful to ask family members. You can take photos of things and send it in your family group chat, or
Ooh,
you
that's a good
can,
idea. Yeah.
like my aunt and uncle that do not have children, they're in their 70s and they host Thanksgiving. And they actually had like a sign up sheet that if anyone was interested in certain pieces of furniture, because we only gathered like that one time a year,
Yeah.
but it's just a great way to say, like, okay, so like for furniture, family heirlooms, like any of those types of things, kind of having almost like a sign up sort of option, and then making sure you are documenting that on your side. Like, oh, okay. So for example, I have a piano that my dad gave my mom as a wedding gift. I learned to play on it. It's in my home. And so I would have a conversation with my husband and kids like, oh, if you guys want to keep it, if this is something where the kids want to
Yeah.
learn how to play on it, let's keep it. Otherwise, I want it to be donated to this university music program. But you're giving kind of like the first right of refusal to the family members, but making sure you actually ask them, because it will surprise you. Like my brother is a lot more sentimental than I am, and he wants things that like I don't want, but I never would have guessed it. So I
Mm,
think that
yep.
that's
Yep.
also a helpful exercise to have the sign up sheet or ask questions about the furniture and the family heirlooms and those types of things, because that again not only saves time with like what would so and so have wanted, but then also, as you know, when someone passes and there's multiple kids, it's like you don't want the fighting of like, oh, well, I want this
And it
vase.
happens more often than we would like for it to happen. I've heard it a lot. So you're right. Yeah. And I love that because I actually did have that give that suggestion to a client who they're going to be their situation is a little bit different. They're moving to another country. And so they wanted to use their home as a rental while they're gone, but they needed to pare down. And so Easter was coming up at the time that we're recording this. Easter just passed. And so what we strategized about is, hey, bring those things up, those small appliances. They had a lot of small appliances. And what they decided was they just had, they wanted the family members to, if you want it, pick it up, grab it that day and it's yours kind of thing. And I just love that idea. And it's, when I think about it, it's like it's so enjoyable to be able to actually see your things being given to someone who will use it or who really wants it. Or in the future, you, like you said, you know that it's something that is going to be meaningful when they do get it, and because it's something that they actually want. And if you don't know, ask. I've had that conversation with my, clients. It's like, oh, maybe my daughter-in-law would want this. And I said, well, let's ask her, let's see. And so I just love that process. And I know you have been going through this process, but think back before when you first started, was there any expectations that you had when you went on set on your journey, not just the Swedish death cleaning part, but when you started your decluttering journey?
Yeah. I mean, at the very beginning, it was kind of health focused. So we were
Okay.
dealing with infertility, and I was
Mm,
really stressed in my life, and I was trying to reduce that stress. So that's kind of where it started.
yeah.
But I think that as I moved along from just like, hey, I have too many dresses, and kind of moving along the continuum and the journey, this was a lot more intentional in its focus. And also, I took things kind of a step further than the book in that I was making sure we already had our wills in place because my husband, being
Awesome.
in the military, it's like a free service. At least for him it was. And so we did like
Hmm.
our will and medical directive already. But I took it a step further and I made my funeral wishes, like what do I want for my flowers, my
Yeah.
music, my readings, what do I want for burial or cremation, what do I want potentially for my eulogy. And so again, it's from that, it's focusing on the death part a little bit, which again, some
Yeah.
people don't want to do. However, it's the, I don't want my husband trying to figure out what songs I would have wanted. I don't want to find out, oh, I wanted to be buried, as we found out. I wanted to be buried. He wanted to be cremated. And I'm like, oh, well, I was just doing that because I thought I was going to be beside you, but apparently not.
Yeah.
So let's both be cremated? So it's kind of these things that we like avoid talking about, and then being able to really do all of that. It was unexpected for me because I was
Hmm.
feeling so much relief and also peace about the process. More relief than just the relief you feel like, oh, I got stuff out of my house. Like that's a certain kind of relief. But
Yeah.
this is a relief knowing that you're like, no matter what happens, things are going to be okay for your family members. Like, I don't know. It's like that peace of mind, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what surprised me as I went through the process because I just figured it was like, oh, it's just kind of taking another pass at my stuff. And it ended up being a lot more than that.
Oh, wonderful. Wow. Yeah. And in that process, could you remember anything that you hesitated letting go of? Was there any sentimental items or things that you were surprised that you were having a hard time letting go of at all?
Yeah. And I can't remember if it was part of this or if it was right before, but I had a little bit of hesitation with my high school yearbook. And it was because I had held on to it however many number of years. And I opened it and I was like, wait, who are these people? Like, like who signed my yearbook, you know? And it was not actually sentimental. So I like to tell people there's a difference between sentimental and just old. Sentimental is
Mm,
that it is having like a positive sort of sentiment, right? And for me, the yearbook, it was more like I should keep this because that's what people do. They keep their yearbooks rather than, oh, actually, I didn't like high school as much as other times in my life, like college and that kind of thing. And so it was not like a positive sentiment. And kind of looking at it from that perspective, I was able to let that go. And I guess the other aspect or the other category is some aspirational things like,
mm,
like
mhm.
cook, like baking, cooking type of things where I realistically would not be doing these things. And it was taking up a pretty decent amount of space. So that was a good kind of gut check to be like, okay, I'm not using it. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just, we can get rid of it. And then that's just one less thing for my loved ones to try to like figure out, what should be done with it. So I think those were like the two categories where I just had an extra pause and sort of
Mhm.
thought about things more and was able to let it go, I think, easier than prior to this process, I would say.
Okay, I think I needed to hear that for me if there's no one else that's hearing this because I still have my yearbooks. And you're right. For my experience with high school, positives and negatives, and this could be a message to me saying like, hey, that was a different version of you anyway, right? Back in high school, and do I truly need to hold on to this physical thing? So was it just like straight up, okay, I'm gonna just throw this away, like done. What was it like with that yearbook?
No, I I actually scanned some pages, but not
Nice.
many. But I
Cool.
wrote I
Yeah.
wrote a I wrote a blog post about it, and actually, if you Google like what to do with my yearbook, it's one of the I think it's called "I give you permission to throw away your yearbook." So I think that's why people are like, "What?" Um, but I did not like pitch the whole thing, and I got a lot of
Okay.
comments like, "Oh, you can donate it to a library and all this." I'm like, "Well, yes, but they don't need like 50 of the
Mm,
same yearbook from that
right,
year."
right.
So yes, do what you want to do, people. But I will say that it really made me think about the difference between old and sentimental. And that
I
will come
love
up in
that.
this
Yeah.
process too.
Hmm.
Like it's not
Hmm.
like I should hold on to this because that's what people do. Like if you start saying that to yourself, that is a flag like, okay, let's dig a little deeper. And does
Hmm.
it actually matter to me? Or do I want to tell a story about it and share that with my family members? Because maybe it does mean something to you, but if it was passed on, your family member would have like no idea
No.
why it was important.
Yeah.
That's where that storytelling is like so incredibly important, especially when it comes to some of these more sentimental items that we tend to hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Storytelling is it. I mean, now we have the technology to be able to capture that even, like and through video, through like, pictures, like any of those things. And that takes like, barely any space, in the digital world and versus keeping these yearbooks. I'm gonna have to let you know what I do with my yearbook now because I'm like kind of impressed by that and I am really inspired to, to rethink that. Um, and what do you think people tend to avoid when it comes to this kind of decluttering? I mean, I love that you have really taken the time to address, like, I mean, you're brave, you've bravely addressed the things that many people would rather not because it is scary. There's a fear involved in like, well, how, plan my funeral, what? But there's relief in that. So what do you think people tend to avoid when it comes to this kind of decluttering?
Yeah, I think many people avoid it altogether because they
Yeah.
don't really want to face anything having to do with mortality. It's just
Hmm.
In the US, it's not what we focus on, and in other cultures, Sweden obviously being an example, it's more death is more integrated into the conversation about life as well. And I was thinking
Mm.
about the work you do when it comes to helping people downsize. Like usually we do not do something unless we are running towards pleasure or avoiding pain. So it's like, unless it's a pain, like we're getting to the pain point where there's an issue, somebody falls, there's a health issue, like something.
Big
Typically, we're
life
not
event. Yeah.
a big life
Change.
event. Yeah, we're not
Hmm.
thinking about like, oh, I think I'm just going to downsize my stuff today
Yeah.
because it just seems like a great idea. Similarly, people don't usually think like, oh, I'm going to death clean today because it just seems like a great idea. But I think that that's probably why. Like, unless there's a
Yeah.
specific impetus for them to do that, they're not going to. And I will say that as far as the author of the book, she was saying, usually people in their 60s or 70s are kind of when you are getting in the last third of life is kind of like her recommendation. And I guess that makes sense because people would be downsizing probably around that time anyway. But I really recommend doing this proactively. And I'm sure you could say the same about some of the
Yeah.
considerations when it comes to downsizing because it's so much easier to do it without being on this like time crunch of like
Absolutely.
this has to be done so we can, get out of the house. Or in this case, like this has to be done because we have to get the house on the market because so and so passed and we have to do this. It's just so much easier to kind of do this while you have the space and the time. And also, like we talked about earlier, that we can have conversations with our loved ones about these things while we are sound in body and especially mind. I think that's like
Yeah.
the most important part. It's like I can have conversations with my husband and even my kids, like, hey, what do you think of this? Like, I don't know. I don't have any vases in my house, but what do you think about this vase? And they're like, I don't like that, mommy. And then my husband's like, I think that's ugly. And be like, okay, well, that's going to go on the
Yeah.
list of like things we can get rid of today. Or when I pass, if I love the vase, like, oh,
Yeah.
just get rid of that when I pass. And it's just, I don't know. It just makes it so much easier to do this in a proactive way. But most people realistically won't because they
Yeah.
don't have the time crunch.
Right. Right. And what I what I love is that there are actually I was a part of creating a video for a certain group of seniors, and it was about decluttering, and I was surprised at some of their responses that like, hey, we've thought about this already, which is great. But like you said, a lot of people don't, and maybe because it's like I said, just that fear of what, like fear of what's on the other side of it. I've had clients saying that digging into their what's stopping you from following through on this, and I'm afraid of what's on the other side. But well, let me ask you, you being on the other side of it, how does your home feel right now?
Yeah. Well, I'm in an interesting season right now. We are literally putting our house on the market in about like 3 days. And
Wow.
we've
Okay.
lived in this house for 17 years, and obviously I don't have a ton of extra stuff, and I am so grateful. I do not have a lot of extra stuff. So right now, I am just incredibly grateful of having gone through this process and decluttering in general because it's just less that I have to worry about. And then also pack and move and unpack and all of the things. But I want to go back to that peace of mind
Yeah.
idea. So I do review some of this, I would say probably maybe on like a yearly basis. And what I mean by that is that spreadsheet I mentioned, like where I want
Hmm.
things to go, the funeral notes and wishes document, which I've shared with my husband. I kind of review that on a pretty regular basis. But otherwise, I am just sort of like decluttering as we need. Right now, the question is, do I want to pack this? That's typically
Mm,
when you're about to
I
move, like,
like that.
oh, do
Yeah.
I actually want to pack this? But I always go back to that intentional
Yeah.
aspect of, okay, we're going to be moving into a larger space, I don't have to fill the space. Like, I don't have to fill a huge walk-in closet just because I have a walk-in closet. And it all comes back to that. I don't want to have to handle it and manage it myself, but I also don't want my family members having to do that on my behalf if something were to happen. So, yeah. So I'm reaping the benefits of
Awesome.
it right now.
Yes, yes. And so lastly, Emily, and by the way, Emily has a wonderful podcast for moms called Moms Overcoming Overwhelm. And I have enjoyed it myself. And I feel like, it's, I love that you have this platform to give, really to give people some guidance on what to do and guidance on and really being so she's so I mean, as you can tell, she's a very relatable and just very real about her life and her intentions. And so one last thing, I hear this, and I'm sure you've heard this a whole lot, and I love to ask other organizers, other experts about this is that like if you absolutely don't know where to start, like, my audience, they've accumulated gosh, decades of things through like for many, many years. Maybe they've inherited some things from other family members too that they don't quite know what to do with. Like if they were to try to start today and they haven't done anything, what would you say to them? And it can be a tip, it can be an encouragement, whatever comes up for you right now.
Yeah, and I think this kind of bridges the Swedish death cleaning aspect and then also just kind of decluttering in general. I think sometimes we get overwhelmed by kind of like, oh, gosh, I have so much and I don't know what to let
Hmm.
go of and everything. And one thing that's always been helpful for me is initially focusing on like the things you absolutely want to keep, like the things that are kind of like the most important to you, kind of like those non-negotiable things. And when it comes to the Swedish death cleaning part, it is again like saying where you would want things to go. So for the things that are most important to you, perhaps it would be jewelry or perhaps it would be
Hmm.
books or whatever. Just being able to make a plan for those things, I think is great because then you're getting motivated by like this initial thought process, but you're not having to necessarily declutter anything like right out of the gate. So I think that's a great way to kind of step into it with the things that matter most to you. And
I love it.
if you were to pass like where you would want those things to go, I think that might be a good
Yeah.
place to start.
Love it. Well, Emily, this has been such a delightful conversation and something, a title of Swedish death cleaning. I mean, it sure was a gentle conversation. I just love it. Like, I just want to thank you. And I feel like my audience will be really, truly blessed with this episode. And so thank you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And as we end, Emily has a gift for you, and I will include the link in the description. And Emily, tell us a little bit about this gift that you want to give to my people, my audience.
Yeah. Well, it's called Five Simple Steps to Start Swedish Death Cleaning. And it
Yes,
reviews a
nice.
lot of what we talked about, but it's just kind of a little like cheat sheet to help you. And yeah, just as you are beginning your journey. And the book itself is really short. So just so you all know, like you could probably read it in a couple hours, and that would be a good kind of supplemental thing to do if you have the time. But yeah, and we can link that in the description, and I hope that it's helpful to everyone.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, friend, if this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to hit follow and stay connected. And if you want some personalized guidance, I offer a 30-minute session if you have a couple of questions regarding downsizing, and we can knock it out together. The link is in the show notes whenever you're ready. Bye for now.